Okay, good afternoon. We are together for our final conference session. What's been a really fun, interesting conference for me personally, and I hope for many of you. Always excited to end this with a really strong way of showing parent voice, which is to have parents providing their own voice to us. We have asked for parents who we know from the work they do well, and who we really admire for their advocacy efforts, not just for their own families, which they have done tirelessly, but also for other families as well, in a variety of ways, which they can talk to you about. So 3 out of 4 of these parents still have minor children experiencing significant mental health challenges, and can talk to you about how they've used their voice in their personal journey to be able to access YES services, youth empowerment services, for anybody listening who's not super familiar with YES yet. So let me tell you who we have with us today. I'm going to start by introducing Sarah Bennett. She's from Lewiston, Idaho. She's married and has 2 sons who are 9 and 15. One of her children has a complex medical situation that affects his ability to regulate his emotions and moods. Sarah is also the owner of an outpatient behavioral health treatment center in Lewiston with 15 years experience working in mental health care. So thank you so much for joining us, Sarah. Tricia Ellinger lives in Emmett, Idaho, and is a veteran of the challenges of being in a rural community with special needs children. She is a mom to 5 kids, currently has 3 children still at home. They have intellectual and/or developmental disabilities and are diagnosed with severe emotional disturbance as well. So they are what we refer to as dual diagnosis kids. Tricia is a retired school counselor with a social work background and brings a depth of experience to her advocacy work. Brittany Shipley, excuse me, is the mom of 2 kids with developmental disabilities, special healthcare needs, and complex mental health conditions. Brittany heads up Wood River Valley NAMI, our National Alliance for Mental Illness, and in all her spare time, she also serves on the Region 5's, which is Central Idaho, Behavioral Health Board, and is on the board of the State Independent Living Council. And I am giving you very small snippets of what the full range of ways in which these parents actually engage in mental health advocacy. And finally, Janet Hecky is our 6-year veteran as a Division of Behavioral Health parent consultant and advocate. She's been closely involved with the design, implementation, and monitoring of outcomes for the YES system. Janet shares her life experience raising children with suicidality and severe developmental disabilities to foster understanding, encourage dialogues, and improve access to care. So, welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. Let's get started with the following question to each of you. Why do you think we need parent voice in our youth mental health system? Let me ask Tricia, will you start us off with that?
Sure, that would be great. And thank you for inviting me to participate in this. You know, a parent voice moves, and I mean that literally. It creates change for children, families, communities. It gives a perspective to why the systems do what they do. It gives perspective. It improves supporting youth and parents to really succeed in this journey. Parent voice can engage partners and stakeholders to be invested in the change process. So hearing a parent voice makes them invested in you and your child. Parent voice encourages healing for parents and participants, hearing personal stories and working together really for a common good. Parent voice offers so much opportunity for growth, increasing knowledge and skill, establish and strengthens connections that I never knew I needed, which is the truth. I didn't know I needed to be connected to all these folks. And really, I want to say that parent voice lessens the feeling of isolation and it improves your outcomes.
Thank you so much, Tricia. Love bringing connection into that, because I think parents don't necessarily realize how important and valuable that can be for them. Janet, would you share some thoughts with us on that?
Sure. Thank you, Ruth. And hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us all today. For me, I look at this as if it was why we need parent voice in the system. I liken to someone going to a designer who's never cooked before and asking them to design a kitchen for Gordon Ramsay. You might have really high-end refrigerators and other appliances, but Gordon Ramsay's not going to be too happy when he has to go outside his house, get a ladder, put it up against the side of the house, knock out the wall in order to get to the refrigerator because they put it in backwards on the second floor. You can't really expect even the most well-meaning people to design a system with all the code requirements the system requires, but have it function for families that don't look like theirs. So that's, to me, the biggest reason why you need family voice.
Thank you. How about Brittany?
Thanks, Ruth. And thank you, everybody. I agree wholeheartedly with everything that was just stated. I think I often look at it like when I went to school to become a social worker, I knew that I would be having conversations in my line of work with things that came aligned with, diagnoses and trauma and suicidality. And that was expected. Never in my career would it be expected for me to sit down at a table and have somebody be like, all right, so talk to me about rocket science. That's now expected in your degree and in your field of work. It would never be expected for me to just know it and be like, all right, go. Tell me how to build this rocket. That's not what I was expected. So if we go, that's how it is for families, right? So we cannot expect even if they're professionals, right, in mental health and things, we cannot expect other people to understand the circumstances of mental health, especially with children, just because they work in that field too, or just because they help write those laws or they help write those programs. Because if they haven't truly lived it, then it's not the same thing. And every case is different. And so that's no different than myself as a social worker walking into a room and being asked to understand rocket science. And so that's how I like to look at it. And so our voices make a difference because we're help painting that picture for them and creating a step-by-step guide and giving them an understanding for what it truly is that we're living every day with. Because every child is so different, every person is so different, and every circumstance is so different.
Thank you so much for that. Sarah, can you share with us?
Well, my take on it is I think that we have to have parent voice because I can bring in a document or an assessment and a professional can read the slew of diagnoses that my child has been given, and we can read the reports and we can develop an opinion and a thought about him, and somebody can tell me this is what I need to do, or this is what you need, this is how you manage behavior, but nobody knows what it's like to be at home with me and to walk into school after we've had a really bad day, or to talk to a doctor and nobody has an answer for me. And so we need parent voice because we know what it's like day to day to struggle. This is the most isolating experience I've ever had in my life. And it's the hardest thing I've ever done. And without parent voice, I don't know how anybody would ever be able to offer support and help.
Yeah, that question in your answers tails nicely off of a session we just had with psychiatrists who was helping parents understand ways in which to communicate with physicians, physician assistants, nurse practitioners, providers generally, so that, and he just did such a great job of capturing why parent voice is so critical, that only the parent can really provide the information that's going to be able to help anybody to actually help the child and or support the parent. So really appreciate your answers on that. Does anybody have any comments in relation to what anybody else said before I move on to the next question? All right, let me go ahead and move on. What are a couple of ways that you have seen parent voice make a difference in our system? Maybe Brittany, would you start us off with that?
I would say that I've seen parent voice make a difference in our system, in a variety of ways, at all different levels. Locally on a smaller level, I've seen it make a difference, in our schools, right? I have seen parents come to our local schools and just talk about the need for integration at different levels. And, just yesterday here locally, we had our local school psychiatrist help bring something to the forefront because we had parents who had moved here from California where the Best Buddies program is flourishing. And they just said, we need something like that here. And so this has been in progress for a year now. And yesterday it launched, and it was the first program in Idaho to happen, in Haley, a rural community. And it was because of parent voice having brought it to the school. And so, that was able to be coordinated on a smaller level. But then in addition to that, I've seen that parent voice go further. I've seen parents coordinate, and I've seen it firsthand at the statewide level, and I've seen laws happen because parents shared their stories with senators and, representatives. And I've seen laws happen firsthand because those parents said that this is unacceptable. And if this is happening to me, that this is happening to other families, and this cannot continue. And so I don't think any family should ever feel like my voice doesn't matter. It's the age-old story of like, why should I bother voting in an election when I'm just one tiny voice? It's no different when your voice is that of a parent of children with disabilities. Like, your voice matters just as much in this, if not more, because it's the same thing. Like, your voice has that pull, and we're stronger together, and your voice can make a difference.
Nice, thank you for that. Sarah, would you talk to us about that a bit?
Well, for me, I feel like the system is really confusing to navigate, and I work in the system every single day. I spend my whole life in the mental health field, and I feel like I've fallen into everything, every resource that I've gotten, truly by accident. And so I think parent voice is the only way that we as a system and as parents can do the best thing that we need for our kids. I make it a point to put my face in front of the people who make decisions. I spend a lot of time on boards and in groups, community organizations, on all those things, because I need to understand the system, because then I know how to advocate for myself. And that's the only way that I have been able to build the resources. And then I just share them with everybody I know that's out there. And I make sure they know they get to make a decision. I've seen kids placed in our local community where they would not have been placed in our local community otherwise. I have seen the system try really hard to react and respond. And I mean, we live in rural Idaho, so there are no resources here, right? And so for us, I think we have to get our faces in the system. We have to advocate for change, and then we just have to use the resources that we have.
I think those are so many great points right there, because what we see at IFF so much, and it's so admirable, is people do get involved at the community level, at the regional level, at the state level, bringing their voice. And it does, in fact, help them with their own journey frequently, but then they turn around and share that information so often. And parents supporting parents are, it's just the way to survive this journey. So thanks for those thoughts. How about Janet?
Thanks, Ruth. As I was contemplating this question, I thought about this saying, nothing for us without us. It's a hard concept to grasp if you haven't been on the receiving end of it. And it really took the state several years to understand that working with us is going to save them time and money and create a better system. It isn't perfect. They have rules and regulations that they have to follow that don't always align with making things better for families. And they're understaffed and they're underfunded. But I've seen attitudes and approaches change over these last 6 or 7 years. We had a parent actually write the parent handbook for IDJC that is widely circulated and used by parents and prosecutors and probation officers. We have parents embedded in almost every single work group where decisions are made and discussed. And I couldn't count the number of things that are different or easier or more clear or even accessible for families now than they were 6 years ago because of parent voice in the system. That doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean it's the way we want it to be. It doesn't mean that they always listen. But it absolutely makes a difference. And Brittany and Sarah, I couldn't double down on what you said more about the impact that it has for you as a individual and in your communities to be able to provide parent voice within that community. People are hurting for it. They want it. They want to hear it, and they want those resources, and not feeling alone, knowing that there are other people going through what you're going through is just one of the biggest graces in the whole thing.
Thanks, Janet. I think one of our speakers yesterday, I think it was yesterday, could have been the day before, made the point that, I think it was yesterday, and I think it was one of our parents, Kim Hoganson, that what people will remember is bits of your story that you share, so much more than facts and figures that you might also try and use to have people understand a need. But when we have certainly seen when you all share of yourselves and your experiences, that's what stays with some of the decision makers that we really need them to understand the family perspective before they make decisions. So thanks for that. And Tricia, what can you tell us on this question?
I've really thought about this, and I really thought of specific examples. And I want to say that when you saw in the news Governor Little's budget increase for mental health in Idaho and the funding and exploration for crisis centers for youth and residential treatment programs, why do you think that happened? That happened because of all of these people and all of the parents in Idaho speaking up and having a voice and saying, things need to change. Was part of it, certainly, but I was only voice at the table. And so getting funding and having the state of Idaho recognize there is a need. We are sending kids out of state to receive treatment because we don't have, we're sending the most vulnerable population of kids with developmental disabilities and mental health issues clear across the nation to receive services in a residential treatment. That's inappropriate. That is not acceptable. That's one thing. I was able to participate in Partners in Policy Making, which is part of the Idaho Council on Developmental Disabilities. They have never had a mental health component to their Partners in Policy Making. And I said, wait a second, 85 to 90% of DD people, kids and adults, have a mental health issue. Why are we not talking about this? And so, I mean, so things don't just change within the YES system, they change globally. You can change things in school systems. So there's so many awesome things that are happening in Idaho from big to little. I mean, and you just have to be aware when you see something great happening in the news, it's because a parent advocated for that to happen and they worked to make it happen and built connections and told their stories to make that happen.
I think it's so true. It makes such a good point. You know, one person just bringing voice to something allows another person or several other people to then understand that, yeah, right, I feel that too. I can bring voice to that. And then it's the power of voice at that point is what gets things done. So thanks for that point. Let me ask you guys, what is the positive impact you have seen in using your voice for your own child or children on or on a larger stage in some way? What are some personal examples of being involved in using your voice that has turned out in some positive way? Sarah, do you have an example of that?
So my son started experiencing seizures when he was 3 years old, and he has partial complex seizure. So he sort of stares off into space and he gets this very odd half smile. And so he's 3 years old and we're like, what is happening? And we go to the doctor and I tell them what we're seeing. And she really just kind of pushes me aside. And she's like, I guess we could do an EEG. And I said, no, that we're doing this. Like, I know what I'm seeing and I know we have a problem. And this is what you're going to recommend. And we did an EEG. We got the referral for neurology and we were able to, my son has some genetic disabilities and some dysfunction in the way that his brain is formed. And so we were able to come up and find that. And we still don't have a diagnosis for my son. And so I have had to be very direct because we don't have a diagnosis and we've done all the genetic testing that's possible. And we just are still kind of waiting for more research to happen. And so I have learned, that was my first experience where it just became very clear to me, I am his only voice. And I'm the only person that's going to be there to say, no, this isn't right. There's nobody else that's going to do that for me. And the only way I can get resources is to continue to push the system.
Thanks, Sarah. And what a great point that parent voice is also youth voice. I mean, when youth get old enough to share their own voice with us, that becomes obviously very important and something we really promote and support here at the Federation. But there's also the parent piece of being able to bring voice to what is happening for a child in their home. So thanks for that. Tricia, how about for you?
I think that my experience with 2 very young kids that needed psychiatric residential treatment and having that experience and going through it and saying this system is not working. The evaluation process, that whole piece of, first I didn't even know the available option. And walking through that and advocate for my kids, and then being able to say, okay, if this is so difficult for me and I'm an educated individual, then we need to make some changes. So the department decided we need an expedited process that does not take so much time, that they can send things up and an evaluation team can say, okay, this is what is available and this is what can happen for this child, because it's so complex. I have 3 kids with needs, a kid in a psychiatric facility or going to an emergency room and them saying, if you don't bring your kid home, you're going to get charged with abandonment. I can't bring my kid home because we're not all safe. Well, you're on a wait list to go somewhere else. It was very complex. And how do we work together as a team to make that work for everyone? It was years ago, but I called the governor. I said, this is not happening. This is not working. You cannot threaten me. I'm at critical mass and still trying to support my other 2 children in the home. And so, not that I recommend calling the governor, but I'm saying that change said to the department, okay, this isn't working. We need a smoother process to understand this eligibility and how to make it happen. And in those certain circumstances, when an expedited decision needs to be made, we need to have that available. We need to look at that and come up with solutions for those kids.
Okay, thanks for that, Tricia. And as there are so many challenges for rural parents, one of them can be Zoom connection and bandwidth. And we're having just a little bit of cutting out or slowing down of your voice. So I'm going to suggest you might want to go off camera too, so we can hear your voice loud and clear. But I could decipher your message totally there, so I don't think that's a problem. Okay, Brittany, can you speak to us about some positive impacts you've been able to see using your own voice?
I would say, on the topic of rural, living in rural areas of Idaho, that's a huge barrier for a lot of us. And where, 88% of Idaho is deemed to be rural, that's been difficult. And so being the parent of 2 kids, with varying degrees of disabilities, my 6-year-old has a lot of rare genetic needs and special healthcare needs and spends a lot of his time in a hospital. And then my 16-year-old has, a variety of developmental disabilities and complex mental health needs. And so he is currently, even at this time, in his 11th inpatient hospitalization for his mental health and developmental needs. So we aren't new to navigating the system when it comes to advocating for his needs and getting care. On that note, we have had to really advocate for those, needs and accessing services and really fighting for that. And so I think one of the things that's really become apparent for us is, when we are grasping and fighting to say that, like, this is a child who has received out-of-state treatment, for over a year at a time. And this is a child who is frequently unsafe to himself and others in the school, in the home, in facilities, and not by his choosing, as I think we all understand, but due to the needs of his, conditions and things. And this is a child who recently started actually saying, please send me away for help. I don't want to hurt people anymore, which is the most impactful thing at all. And this is a state that is just not set up and equipped to often offer the support that children like this often need. And when we're frequently hitting barriers where we're getting denied approval for services on account of it just didn't work before, so the funding can't be approved again because it wasn't approved, or it looks like the behaviors only happen in the home. So then you have to stand up and advocate and say, you're offering services that are over an hour and a half to 2 hours away from the home, and you would like the mother to transport him back and forth only after hours of school, so he can sleep in a group type home setting, but he goes to school in his school home setting. Therefore, he's in a car. A homicidal child is in a car with the mother for 3 hours a day, and the mother's driving 6 hours. Is that deemed safe? Why is that accessible to the department? And advocating that those aren't safe options, collecting letters from physicians, the school staff, things like that about why that's not safe. Using every resource you have. I happen to be a clinician, so I'm able to document through the DSM to say his most recent diagnosis states that qualifying criteria for this diagnosis is that he cannot, these behaviors must be present in a minimum of 2 environments, meaning the home cannot be the only environment. And all clinicians have agreed he meets this criteria. Therefore, home is not the problem. And using every tool you have in your toolbox to say he cannot come home. And you have to advocate at these levels, helping to write House Bill 233 that I know there was a wonderful presentation on day 1 of this conference on. And, even finding, we're finding now the flaws or the loopholes that are being used by the department within that bill, and saying, okay, back to the drawing board. So what can we do to now address the loopholes and things like that when they just aren't being done correctly, and just being willing to never give up, because at the end of the day, if your child doesn't have you, who do they have? And not only that, but what I tell myself at the end of every day is, if this is happening to my family, this is happening to other families. And so most families that I work with on a professional level don't have the ability to keep their head above water when they're in crisis. And so if I'm going to have to stand here and fight for my family, then I'm going to stand here and fight for those families too, and make sure it's known. So for anybody out there who has that stamina and who has that bandwidth, I just encourage them to fight for those families who struggle to fight for themselves at the end of the day. Because it's hard. It's really hard to fight when you can't. And so if you have it in you, even just for one day, to fight for some other people who are struggling on that day, to fight for them, because it makes a difference for all those other families when you can share your story, to fight for them, because it makes the difference.
Thanks, Brittany. Such an important point. The resilience that it takes to get through your own personal journey. But then when you can, in fact, bring your journey to a larger stage to help others, I think all of us have that feeling that, like, oh my gosh, if it's this bad for me, imagine how bad it is for some other people who may have less fortunate circumstances or less supports than I do. And that's such a motivator to so many parents who are in this work. some of the motivation is just righting wrongs, such as the House bill we talked about on day one. It was just wrong what was happening. And all of you, I'm sure, have received messages, I certainly did in raising my kids, that are just wrong and inaccurate and unfair and frankly unconscionable sometimes. And to find our ways to be resilient in the face of that, but also bring our voice to that, I think is just so important. And all of you are certainly great examples of doing that. Janet, could you share, because you've been at this work on multiple stages for quite a while, and you've been able to see some direct effect of your work, I'm sure.
Yeah, I just want to start by saying I'm in awe of the 3 other parents that are here, because the advocacy that you do in the middle of the storm is so far beyond anything I even dreamed of being able to do when I was in the middle of it. I was one of those parents that you all now would be advocating for, because I took what I was told as gospel. Like, I didn't know that it could be changed. I didn't know that my voice made a difference. And I thought what the doctors told me about my son was right. And what they told me was that it was my fault. My son was having these issues. It was a parenting issue. And I hear Brittany's story, and I hear Sarah's story, and I hear Trisha's story, and I know you all have been told the same things in various ways that maybe they didn't even mean to come out that way, but that's how we hear them when they tell us what they tell us about our children, is that if you weren't such a crappy parent, your child wouldn't have these issues. And that's how I came to advocacy, thinking that my son didn't have a mental health issue. My son had a bad parenting issue. So I just want to thank you all for everything that you're doing in the middle of it, because I couldn't at that point in my life. I didn't know enough to, even though I'm a well-educated human being and very passionate about my son, and well, all 3 of my kids. So I just want to say, like, working with the other parents and attorneys in the state agencies has really opened my eyes to the breadth and depth of family experiences who were similar to mine. And like the 3 of you, I felt alone and didn't know that other parents experienced what I experienced, because my siblings didn't experience that. My friend group didn't experience that. My children's friends group didn't experience that. So it makes it really easy to believe that you are the problem when your child's having those kinds of issues. I'd like to think that we're seeing a shift in the willingness of people throughout our communities to discuss mental health issues without stigma that there was a decade ago. That people are generally afraid of what they don't know and they can't explain. And bringing this issue to the forefront of conversations is normalizing it to a great degree. And we found ways of relating our experience to others that help them understand why the changes we're advocating for are necessary. For example, I was thinking this morning about this story. We were trying to explain to the state why we didn't want families to have to tell their story over and over and over and over and over again to get services. And we were running up against all these roadblocks that were happening because of, the CMS requires this independent person to review this, and then this, all these regulations and everything. And the easy way for the state was just to comply with all the regulations and not look for ways for things to be combined, so that we had to do it. We had to tell our story fewer times. And I specifically remember it was at an in-person meeting, which didn't used to be unusual, but now is. We were at lunch and we're just standing in line getting lunch. And one of the people from the state was trying to understand why this was important. And her father had I believe it was, had a stroke, and he was in the hospital. And it was, I don't know, 10 o'clock in the morning, and the hospital staff came in and said, okay, we're discharging him at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And, she's just like, he can't walk, and I don't have any way to get him into my house. He can't eat. I don't have any way to feed him. He can't, and I don't, and he can't, and I don't. And I looked at her and I said, exactly. And now imagine that you have to tell that story to every single solitary person to get him food, to get him a way into the house, to get him to the bathroom, to get him to bed, to get him to this, to that. And it was like, oh crap, that would suck. I don't want to have to relive the moment that I heard that my dad had a stroke 100 times a day, and she got it. And she made the change that was necessary to minimize the number of times we had to tell our stories. So thinking about all of that and all of the things that she had to do suddenly made her realize in very real terms what it felt like to be us every day of our lives. So that's just one example, but it makes a difference.
Yeah, great example. Actually, thank you so much for that. I'm going to throw out one more question, but first I want to ask our audience to please put in any questions you would like to have answered by this panel, or topics that you would like us to address, because we are going to have time for that after this last question that I have for them. So go ahead and do that now, please. That'd be great. Okay, so tell me how advocacy has been meaningful to each one of you. Let me start with Tricia.
Yeah, I want to say that, well, first of all, I want to say that what was shared, that if you have stamina to fight, you are fighting for others as well. I mean, that has been powerful. And I think that connected to that is when you run out of that stamina, it's okay to step back. And the Federation has been incredibly, and even the committees or boards that I've been on have been, life happens. And so if you need to step back, go ahead and do that. Come back when you're ready. But truly, if you have stamina, you are helping keep someone else's head above water by sharing stories and advocating for them. I just want to say this, this is going to sound corny, but I'm a better human being for doing the work that I'm doing. I have purpose and I have meaning. I've grown in my skill and my knowledge. I've grown in my comfort level that every time I share my story, I'm not in tears, and that I'm not re-traumatized when I have to reshare the story. I've been able to hold space. This is a really important thing for me. I've been able to hold space for other parents who are struggling in their journey. So connecting to other parents, listening to their stories, I can hold space for them and support them, and not be critical or judging or jump to solutions necessarily. I can say, okay, let's walk this walk together, because I've been on the walk you've been on. And so I think that I'm just a better human being. I have education, I've done the work, but nothing prepared me for the 3 children that I adopted. Nothing, not even parenting my 2 biological children, did that prepare me for this journey that I've been in for the last 8 years. And so if I have something to share, I want to share that. And I want to hold space for other people going through this same experience, and trying to help them navigate some of the issues, or at least just listen. If I can just listen and bring that back to stakeholders and say, I heard this. This is still happening. What a joy. What a joy that is, to be able to have the stamina and to help other people keep their head above water.
You've said several things that really resonate with me, and so I'm guessing with other parents. And I just want to comment on those real quick. One is the personal journey and the personal development that happens. Because for me, parenting my children was the kind of the first thing I hit in life after having gone through childhood and schooling and started a career and getting married, and that I just felt like, oh my gosh, I'm truly terrible at this. I've never been terrible at anything before. I seem to always just be good or good enough at things, whether it was sports or not really art, but sort of. I always got by. I could just draw on things, inner things that had me be able to succeed in a variety of places in life, and that wasn't happening in my parenting journey. And I wish I had this card that a friend gave me once, that I could put up for you to see, because the image along with the sentiment of the card was so great. It was a little guy with a big sword just caricature, on a boat in a very stormy sea. And the caption, and it just lives with me and has since the moment I received that card, is, if the seas were always calm, we would never build a better boat. And that was the message to me that, oh yeah, okay, I guess, yeah, these stormy seas I'm always in, but I am in fact building a better boat, a better me. And so I've always found that something very helpful to go back to. And I just appreciate your thoughts on really humanizing this journey and how the advocacy that we do, even when it's for our immediate own need and our family's need, is has that ripple effect of always helping other people. And so when we can bring ourselves to it, do it, because it's making a big difference. Thanks for your thoughts on that, Tricia. Sarah, how about you?
So when I was in college, I took a gender studies class, and I thought that I would move to DC and feminist advocacy was going to be the direction I took for my life. That was the first time in my life that I had passion and I was excited and I built connections and I did all these things that were really fun. But then I come back to Idaho and life keeps going. And so my life went in a different direction. And I have always thought about that. And I think going through what I've gone through over the last 6 years, there have been times where I thought my son wasn't going to make it. And that was the scariest time I ever had. I've gone through really hard times where he's been aggressive, and that's really hard. And then I've been through times that have been really amazing. And so I never really understood how important those shared experiences were until those extreme things happened in my life, because I have a really supportive family. I have a twin sister. We live next door to each other. Our kids are the same age. And she was really supportive of me, but there was a lot of judgment. And she wasn't trying to be mean. She wasn't trying to be rude. My family's really supportive, but there was a lot of judgment there. And I never felt so alone in my life, being surrounded by my whole family. And my husband is very supportive, and he and I have really learned how to pull off each other's strengths and to balance. I do really well in the morning. He does really well at night. We can really kind of work together in those moments. So advocacy has been the grounding force for me. So it has given me control in a situation that I feel completely out of control in. I have found that advocacy has given me connection to people that truly understand how I feel, and that people are going to understand what it feels like, or what it's like to have your child kick you or punch you or threaten you. And there's no judgment. There's nobody telling me that I did something wrong, or this is what I even need to do. People just listen, and they just let me know that I'm not alone. And that is what keeps me going at this point, and that's why I keep pushing myself and getting myself more and more involved, because that has made me feel connected.
Oops. Thanks for sharing that. Really appreciate that. That resonates with me too. Janet, how about you?
Thanks, Ruth. Honestly, I'm not sure I have much more to add. What I have to say is going to be reiterating some of what both Sarah and Tricia said, probably far more articulately than I will. But advocacy, when I was first asked to join the first meeting of the parents to provide input on the state children's mental health system of care, I honestly didn't have any idea why I was being asked. Like I said, I thought my child had a parenting problem, not a mental health problem. So I didn't know how I was going to be able to be of assistance to changing a system of care, and really didn't know what about the system of care needed changing. I also didn't think anyone else had experienced what I experienced with my son. And I wasn't certain that his experience was due to a mental health issue, even though he had been suicidal for 9 years prior to completing. What I found was that my experience was so similar to so many other families in so many ways. And these families had a variety of mental health concerns. They weren't all families that had children with suicidality issues. that was its own special form of healing for me. I suddenly wasn't alone in my experience. And I honestly, to this day, I still can't put it into words, the shift that it made in me to go from feeling like I was just a crappy parent to, oh my God, there's other families out there that are dealing like this. And holy crap, there's other parents out there that feel exactly the way I did. And they shouldn't, I don't want them to ever feel that way. I don't want another parent to feel like what they're going through is their fault. On a larger scale, learning to advocate for those families has been the most meaningful work of my life. There's nothing, in my opinion, that will help you more than learning by helping others. To be able to make other people's painful and sometimes very infuriating experiences speak to the system in a way that the system can learn to create customizable, person-centered flexibility when the system typically is designed for the masses is a great honor to me. It's frustrating at times, it's slow always, and it's never all that I hoped it would be. But the connections that I've made and the changes that I see in perspectives, especially in those aha moments when you see the system change in a way that makes even a little improvement for all families, it's worth every minute of it to me.
Very nice. Thanks for that. And Brittany, will you share with us? And then we're going to take some questions we have from our audience.
Yeah, I mean, just to echo everything that's been stated. And I guess from my perspective, advocacy is my form of problem solving, and I think it's always been, I mean, if I just look back, like when all growing up, I was always like, I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to be a teacher when I grow up. And I want to fix everybody's problems. That's what my parents told me I always said. And so in high school, Wood River High School has what's called the Teaching Academy. And I was really fortunate to do that and dip my toes in the water to see if that's really what I wanted to do. And you actually intern in your local schools and get your actually some interning with teachers. And right off the bat, they were flabbergasted when I was like, well, I want to do it in special education. And they were like, huh? And so I went into special education and I didn't like that one that had never been done. And I didn't like how things were being done. And so then I left high school and I was like, I want to be a special education teacher. And as I started working in special education after high school, I was like, well, I don't like this. And all the things I didn't like were system level changes. And, I formed relationships in our special education here. And it was, okay, well, to fix that, you need to go higher. And it was like, oh, all right. So I don't want to be a special education teacher. I want to address this. And that means I need to do something larger. And so I went down social work, again, problems. And so for me, it's always been about like, if I don't like something, let's change it. And so, it's always kind of been like, I see problems and I can either sit here and complain about them and sit at my desk or sit at home and complain and whine, or I can just go out there and do something about it. And so I would rather do something about it than just sit at home and complain and whine about it. And so I'd rather be a part of that solution. And that's how I look at it.
Thanks for that. As I throw out these next questions from our audience, I'm just going to have one or two of you who want to respond, just jump in and respond, because I want to make sure we get to at least the 3 questions that I currently see. So the first one is, how do you deal with family who don't understand the struggles that we go through and who, for lack of a better word, don't believe you? Who can share on that? And we had a little conversation on that, but who can expound a bit?
I don't have time for that. And I'm a very outspoken person, and I just kind of say it how it is. And so I tell people, even if they're close to me, I appreciate your support. It's not helpful right now. If you can't be helpful in this situation or not share your opinion, then I'm going to take a break. Because this isn't what's good for my family.
Right. And that is a form of advocating for yourself and for your child right there. And I think telling people this just isn't helpful right now, it's not judgy. It's just speaking your truth. And so I really like how you captured that right there, because that is a phrase that really might help some of you to just hold on to and think about when you're really feeling that way. Is that something that you can just bring voice to? Anyone else on that?
Yeah, Ruth, I have a little something here. I think it's really important to acknowledge that when your family doesn't believe you or doesn't understand your struggles, that's a huge personal loss, because up until that point, that family has likely been your support system. And there's nothing that hurts worse than having your support system be the one to reject your experience. So I just want to acknowledge how painful that is, but also empowering in the sense that if you can do what Sarah said and you can set those boundaries and explain to them like how it's hurtful and why it's hurtful, or just even if all it is look, that's hurtful and I don't need that in my life right now. So, you know, when you're ready to have a genuine conversation about why that's hurtful, then we can sit down and talk. But until then, you know, I need to kind of go my own way now. It's one of the hardest things you'll do, but it's so empowering to be able to set healthy boundaries that way, because they just don't understand. And one of the things I found over and over and over again, and I liken this to going back to and thinking about when HIV first came out or when cancer first came out and people couldn't even speak the word. And they couldn't because the idea that that would happen to them is so terrifying that they have to make something else to blame. Oh, it's the foods you ate, or oh, it's the lifestyle that you have, or oh, it's the this. And with mental health, it's oh, it's your parenting, because that could never happen to them because they don't parent the way you parent. Just like it could never happen to them that they couldn't get AIDS because they didn't have the lifestyle you had, or they couldn't get cancer because they didn't eat the foods you ate, or whatever it is. It's a terrible piece of human nature to go through that. So anyway, I talked too much.
Yeah, you know, the adage comes up to me because this is what happened in my personal experience, that, you know, people don't know what they don't know, right? So sometimes people are so well-intentioned. And I had a super supportive family. I mean, they were just my biggest cheerleaders in life. They, you know, frankly, thought I was great and very capable and all, but they didn't understand what was happening in my home. And I had to teach them a bit of what I was learning, you know, as I began to understand what was happening in my home, because they didn't know what they didn't know, just like I didn't used to know what I didn't used to know. And so I took it as an opportunity to sort of use that phrase of, you know, this isn't very helpful to me now, but let me tell you what would be, is like, this is what I've learned, and this is how it's changed my mindset and what I know about what's happening in our home. And I really saw that make a difference with my mom in particular, who really wanted to learn and wanted to understand in the end. So, okay, let me move on because I want to get on to these other questions. So what do you do when you keep hitting roadblocks and keep being told no because your child does not fit a typical mold? Anybody have any immediate thoughts on that? And I can yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me, Ruth?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I experienced this so much because my kids are in the two worlds of DD, in the world of DD and mental health. So it's called siloed. You know, it's like, I don't treat that because I do this. I can't help you with that because we don't do this. Or your child isn't going to succeed because of this. Honestly, everyone that I've ever encountered wants what is best for children and for families. So it's finding common ground and saying, what do you think might work? Where else can we go to find answers? And it's really out of the box thinking. Janet could probably speak to all the panelists could probably speak to this, but sometimes it's saying, okay, then the team needs to come up with a solution, because my kid isn't typical. You're right. I'm acknowledging they're not typical. And so how do we meet his needs or her needs in the non-typical world? And you just keep on asking. And even if that means going to the Federation or going to any of your partners and saying, this answer is unacceptable, please help me. So I just keep on asking questions. Keep on seeking, and I've had Ruth say, I don't know the answer to that, and come back to me and said, oh, I think I found it. Or Michelle saying, I think I found something for you. Fantastic. Let's try that. So keep asking. That's what I would suggest.
We certainly do that at the Federation. We are always, just in the question, what else can we learn? How can we help? Because you do bring us so many individual situations. There's no way we can just straight off the cuff say, oh, here's what we suggest, or here's what's going to help your situation. And it takes a village. And for us, it takes a village of working with other people to try and help everybody who comes to us for support and guidance. Does anybody else want to offer anything on that? Okay, I want to share something that Michelle has put in our chat from our earlier session today with the trauma psychiatrist, which I think is really important for parents to keep in mind. Parents, this is a quote from him, parents that are embodying and storing shame will not be nearly as equipped to help their children. He was really trying to help us understand that we've got to take care of our own needs, free ourselves of the shame and the guilt that can come with this in order to be on this journey towards really helping our parents. And I think maybe this is just a perfect conference wrap up for us, because what is the most important thing for us as staff at the Federation is to find ways for parents to feel understood, heard, good enough, great, in fact, so oftentimes along this journey that is so difficult and gives us so many reasons to feel badly. And it's just overwhelming and exhausting. So what we would like to happen as a result of this conference, for especially all of you who are with us on this particular session, because obviously you are really interested in what parent voice can be and is, and hearing from parents, is we would like to keep connected. You've been doing some great connecting out there through HUVA. And we will reach back out to all of you to let you know of ways that we would like to be able for you to continue connecting, not just with us at the Federation, but with each other as well. And for us, we want to offer you individual support. You know, if where you are is your biggest need is, I've just got to be shored up so that I can help my family through this journey, then that's where we will be for you. That is a great reason to come to us. If you are, I want to feel shored up, I want to know other parents in this journey, but I also really feel this drive that the 4 parents we've just been talking to have had to make a difference beyond my family. Well, we can do that as well. We have places to plug you into the system, to share your voice, and in whatever way you're comfortable with. And we would love to do that. The thing we focus on at the Federation, well, 3 things: support, really near and dear to our hearts. Education, we want to make sure that you have as much information, and our communities and state have as much information as helps us, for instance, become the trauma-informed state that we would like to be. Very striking in our last presentation that the psychiatrist said, and I mean, all of us understand this, but no, Idaho is not a trauma-informed state at all. And yet there are trauma-informed states. So why can't we be that here? Well, we can if we insist on it, but it's going to take a lot of assistance. And we have a lot of catching up to do with other parts of the country and the world. So, in the last part of our what we do, support, education, and advocacy. And we advocate for you and for all parent and youth need, but we want to give you platforms in which to advocate for yourselves and for others. And we want to teach you about advocacy to the degree that you would like help in figuring out, well, how do I share my story effectively? Well, how do I stand in front of a legislator and tell him what I think needs to happen. And how do I attend a yes system work group where they're discussing pieces of the system and let them know what part of the system is not working for me. So that is the work we do. And we would love for you to join us in promoting parents in that work. Great parting thought from Tricia here. We perform best through our collective intelligence. And you know what? I just want to, let's have a shout out for our collective intelligence because it's pretty great. It's pretty great. We learn so much from all of you all the time. I want to thank our parent panel. I want to thank the people who are with us on this part of our this session today, are people who I've seen pretty much on every single session. And I want to thank you for your interest and your just being on your own journey with us. Please stay in touch with us. We will try to stay in touch with you. I do want to say that I told you yesterday, those of you who were with us, that our top 10 connectors on Whova were going to get a tote bag. Let's see, I can't see myself. So, oh, great. Can you see? Wait, hold on. Yep. There we go. That's the children's, well, the Mental Health Awareness Month tote bag. This is Mental Health Awareness Month for anybody who doesn't know. And wow, this is very exciting for me. Tube Guy. This guy has been with me in my life for a very long time. Yesterday, I showed you a little bit about how he works. So I'll try and quickly show you one more time. I brought him to my family. Thought we would be a great home for him. Thought my parent, there we go. There we go, there's Tube Guy. Makes a lot of noise. I gave him as a gift to my husband and kids. Thought we'd have a lot of fun with him, and they were a very neglectful home for Tube Guy. So that was very sad to me. And I have tried to. This is Tube Guy's home. Tube Guy even has a little story, his own story. This is perfect for what we do here. He has his story, tells his story. He has recommended uses. They are great. And so our top connector is, I'm going to put Tube Guy in the mail to our top connector. That is Stephanie Purvis. And Stephanie, I do so hope you will love and foster. And actually, I really hope you just adopt and keep forever. Make Tube Guy a part of your forever home. And if you ever need to move him on like I am, just find the right home for Tube Guy. So, okay. I think actually it is part of my own trauma and what I went through with my family that makes me so attached to this guy, quite frankly. But maybe it is also a sign of my healing that I am willing to share Tube Guy with the rest. So maybe that inspires you to just stick with your journey, because you too can find some healing working in this area and being around all these amazing parents that we have with us today. So thank you. I'm going to end the conference here. I just have such gratitude for what we've been able to share the last 3 days together, and all of your good questions and all of your good attendance and support. And we look forward to another conference next year. And we always want your ideas as to what are the meaningful topics that we can share with you. And I want you to know, we do lots more than just a conference in terms of education. So give us a topic and we'll put together, a 1, 2, 3 hour session on it. We can do that. We know we're going to invite the doctor we had this morning with us to do some more sessions with us. So with great gratitude, we're going to sign off here at the Federation of Family. Thanks again to the parent panel and to all of you who've been with us throughout. Take care, everybody.